A little tender to you. Oh, I got a virtual background on. I better stop that.
Got my buddy might join. I don't know for sure or not, but I did send him the link.
Oh, well, that's great. Oftentimes the one right before Thanksgiving or Christmas is a little more sparse.
Yeah.
Because people got prep on their minds.
Biggest party of the year.
Is it? Hey, we're live. Is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought it would be St. Patty's Day.
No, because everybody basically has tomorrow off, like everybody.
Oh,
All
that's
industries.
right. I guess they're all home from wherever
Everybody's
they're
home.
at, and they're seeing their friends and everybody too. That makes sense. That makes sense.
I'm boycotting. I'm not doing it.
No, I wouldn't judge you. I'm on my dieta, so I can't do those things right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Amir, how are you? So we're going to start on time. I think we got like 2 minutes or something. We had a good 3-hour set this last Saturday. You know, when's a really good sit, a holiday sit is New Year's. People think about going out and doing their normal holiday things, but New Year's Eve is a nice time because there's reflection of change. The new year coming up when people feel more motivated to take those things on. Yeah, exactly, right? Time to take stock, basically. Gilbert, what time you get on your plane tomorrow?
11-ish.
Boy, I get our flight's at like 5:50 or something. So you got a bit of a time lag in Tampa, huh?
Yeah, I'll be getting there around 2:30, 3 o'clock, 2:45, something like that.
So you're getting it on at 11 and you're getting there at 2. It's a 3-hour flight from
11:30, 12:30, 1:30, 2:30, 3 hours.
Surprised. All right, no problem. Well, I'll probably be up there like around 3:30, and then I'll call you and we'll meet.
Yeah, cool. I got all the other stuff I'm packing. I had to stop my packing to do the meditation.
I haven't even started packing yet. I'm packing tomorrow.
That's what I normally do, but my sister's on me like, you gotta be prepared. I'm like, let's do it at 5:30 in the morning. We'll meditate, we'll pack. No, she wasn't having it, so.
I like how organized she is. That's great.
Yeah.
It's just about time. So we're going to go ahead and start on time. So let's go ahead and start with our normal process. If there are other stragglers, they can kind of come on as they come on, and we are live. We're good to go. So we're going to go ahead and start, and we'll start with the Shimimpab. Okay, a little light yoga. Okay, you got someone new, Amir. I'll call it out then. We breathe out as we twist. Breathe in, center. Out, twist. Into the front. You're going to grasp the hands behind your back. You breathe in as you arch back. Out, forward. In, up. You're going to switch your grip. Hey, Elena, we've already started. We're just doing our yoga. Breathe in as you arch back. Out, forward. In, up. Out, hands on the knees, Sufi grind. We're going to rotate at the hips 3 times in one direction. Good. Look at all you dedicated, even right before Thanksgiving. That's great. Yeah, perk me up. All right, 3 times in the opposite direction. Good. Now we're going to go ahead and switch legs. The other leg will be in front or on top. We're going to repeat that sequence. Hands together, we breathe in. Start with the right hand, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in. Hands together, out, in, arch back, forward, in, up, out. You're going to switch your grip. In, arch back, forward, in, up, out, hands on the knees. 3 times in one direction. And 3 times in the opposite direction. Good. We'll do a little Qigong to get settled. Kind of put our hands in front of our belly buttons. We know this sequence, but I'll explain. You just breathe in and out in sync with your hands. We'll do it 3 more times. Next movement, you breathe in, hands up to shoulder height. Out as they're down towards the knees. We'll do it 3 more times. Fingertips together. Breathe in as we circle up, out, down and around 3 more times. On the 3rd time, we'll make a little triangle in front of our foreheads. We'll breathe in as we scoop behind us, out as we raise towards the head 3 more times. Make that same triangle again. You're going to breathe into your hands. Breathe out, hands lower to where the thumbs touch the belly button, triangle underneath. You drop your shoulders. Breathe into that triangle 3 times. Okay, wonderful. We're going to go ahead and start sitting. I think everybody here has done this before several times. We're going to go ahead and sit for 30 minutes. We'll see you. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.
You too, happy Thanksgiving. Bye. Good night.
So we're going to sit for 30 minutes. I'm going to keep the time. Then we'll have some Q&A, some Thanksgiving Q&A. We'll all give a little half bow. You can rub your hands together, create a little friction. You can take those hands, you can put them on your face, your eyes, you can run them through your hair, you can rub down your ears. You can tap out your chest, your traps. Give your belly a nice massage, get it ready for tomorrow. Give your back a little massage. You can stretch out your legs and massage your legs if need be. All right, wonderful. So we have Thanksgiving tomorrow. I think Thanksgiving to Christmas is a really good example of habits in motion. So it's a common thing for Americans. I don't know about every country across the world, but we have our holiday season from Thanksgiving to Christmas. And sometimes people, of course, we have the excesses of Thanksgiving, and then they just kind of bleed over. It becomes holiday cookies and then leftovers. And before you know it, it's basically a whole month where we have to recover, and everybody makes their vows on New Year's to go to the gym, get on a diet, do whatever to recover from that process. There's this boom and bust cycle. It's a whole month in America for some of us. So I tell my patients all the time, a lot of my patients have physical difficulties, and diet's one of the main reasons. And the reality is all of us are going to have excesses sometimes, but can we kind of get back on the horse is a very, very important skill. This is something that can't be overstated. For example, we might have a lovely meditation practice where we're having some consistency, and then something difficult happens in our lives. We get out of practice. And then before you know it, it's been like 3 months. And you have to, oh my goodness, I have to kind of go back and start to do these things that had so much impact on my life. So this ability to remember, to kind of do the practices that help you feel more stable. This process of meditation, one of the interesting things is you start to have more of a baseline experience. What it is to have what basic equanimity is what Buddhists call it. Or if you do a physical detox and you're detoxing off food to some degree, you'll start to notice your body feels clean. And then when you have excesses, when you eat too much, when you sleep too much, when you eat really strong flavored foods or something like that, you just feel how much it sways you from that equanimity. It's the same with meditation. In the beginning, what happens is you start to, in the beginning, it might take a little while, but you might start to feel a little settled. And then as you feel a little settled, you might notice that very, I guess, busy environments kind of aggravate you. Too much going on, too much noise, too much distraction and movement. You're just like, whoa, it's just too much stimulation. When your practice really becomes strong and you can just relax into that process, you can just kind of let yourself be washed over by stimuli and not get knocked over too much. And oftentimes when you get knocked over is when you don't have the ability to relax your mind and you end up focusing and your mind becomes really scattered. So I have this experience when my wife and my child are talking to me at the same time. My wife talks and then my child talks over. She wants to get her point across and I'm trying to focus on both and my attention is really scattered and I'll have a sense of frustration. But if I were at Times Square and there were 1 million people and they're all talking and things like that, and I'm not focusing on any of them, then it'd be fine. It's just a cacophony, a lot of stimuli, I'd let it just kind of wash over me. So the point of this little intro is, of course, Thanksgiving's tomorrow. And as we enjoy ourselves and do whatever amount of indulgence that we do, to remember to kind of get back to it, right? Let's be very real with the understanding that our habits are dictating most of our lives. When we start to talk about these, this language and these concepts of like awakening and healing, we can have a peak experience, an awakening experience, or we can have a plant medicine journey, or you can go do your yoga teacher training in Mexico, and you can really feel how wonderful it makes you feel, how much your body improves, your mind really start to become clear. But if that doesn't take hold, then habits come back very quickly and they rule so much of our lives. And sometimes this is not emphasized enough, I think, in the spiritual disciplines. it is when you're actually involved in practices and part of a tradition to a degree. You know, every tradition has kind of an aesthetic part where they have to rein in the senses, right? So like, for example, Muslims, it's Ramadan. You have a month where you're really not eating or drinking during the day. That's a very strong practice. We have things like Lent, where you give something up for Lent in Christian traditions. And I remember a long time ago, you ever heard of like, some people have like meatless Mondays, or there's whatever, like dry January. They have all these things that kind of rein in their senses a little bit. So just something to consider, because what you'll notice is if you've been, for example, like Gilbert and I don't know how much Gilbert's been doing, but I've been pretty clean on my dieta. So tomorrow when there's a Thanksgiving, I'm having a Thanksgiving brunch kind of, I'm not really going to eat the Thanksgiving food. I'm not going to have dessert. And if I had a big Thanksgiving meal, it would just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm sure I would just get knocked over very quickly. So we're going to open it up for some question and answer as we move into the holiday season. We haven't seen Brenda in a little bit. Brenda's going to yoga training in Mexico. She hasn't told anybody, so I just told everybody. For some reason, she's been feeling more hesitant to share it with the world. But Brenda, do you have any questions or comments or something that's been on your mind lately?
Yeah, the thing that's been coming up a lot is my relationship cycle, and it's not gender specific. It's kind of happens with everybody, family, friends. If I notice that if I don't get what I want, or if something doesn't happen, I kind of go into this like plow mode, like, oh, this person they're my target, and maybe I don't like what they're doing, and all of a sudden, well, maybe I don't need them around, and then I kind of shift into the next phase is like, oh my gosh, I'm not worthy. What have I done? Why don't they like me? I'm not, good enough. And then I kind of get back to this, like, okay, well, maybe I do this like negotiating process. No, they didn't mean it, or whatever it is. And then I kind of come back full circle and I see them, and like, it's like the wall just breaks down and like nothing ever happens. So it's like this whole full circle of a story that I can see that it's happening, and I know that this person doesn't have ill intentions, but just I want to be able to be stronger, and I try to come back to my anchor, have a phrase or something to like break that cycle and stop myself from that thought process, but it just takes over and it consumes me sometimes.
Okay. So that's an interesting thing. One, you're aware of it, right? You're aware of your pattern. So was there a time in which this pattern was very bothersome to you and you weren't aware of it? You would just notice
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So already now you're aware of it. Before you weren't. So that's improvement, right? You're aware of it. Now you're just aware that you don't have the control over it that you'd like. So why is it that when we want something and we don't get it, then what is our reaction chain? So if you look at Brenda, she mentioned several steps that she takes. So she wants something. I want this person to acknowledge me. I want this person to do what I want them to do. They didn't. So that's a feeling of rejection, right? You didn't get what you want. So then you try to plow over them. This process of forcing your way, okay? That doesn't work out. Then it's this, oh, why am I not so worthy? This feeling of self-negation. And then you go through this cyclical process. It almost kind of mirrors like the 5 stages of grief, right? So I know, for example, I've mentioned this to Elena, and she's, of course, a clinical therapist. So 5 stages is very simplified explanation of it. When there's lots of subtleties and nuance, and it's not so linear, right? Just like the 10 stages back here of the traditional path to enlightenment, it's not so linear, and it's definitely nuanced. But it does kind of highlight our energetic tendency. So something happens, we don't like it. So the first thing, we can deny it, right? Like somebody, you say something and they didn't respond in a way that you wanted. Your first thought might be like, what? All right, just deny it. Then you get anger, okay? You start to get angry at it. So anger can lead to lots of things. One of the things that anger can lead to is violence, where you try to control your environment because it's so frustrating to you. Okay. Then there can be a bargaining process. Oh, okay, bargaining with yourself, bargaining with others. What is it that I've done wrong? What do I need to do better? Right? Why is it that I'm not worthy? And then you can actually get depressed about it. You can have this sadness and this grief about it. And then you can just start to accept the circumstances and kind of move through that. So the energy of it kind of peters. There's this ascension, a rise, a peak, a decline, an end. So these 5 stages, they mirror kind of like the 5 stages of change in Chinese medicine also. And you can just notice the intensity of something from the process when you first see it. If you see it in the very beginning, it might not be very intense. If you catch it right away, you're like, okay, then maybe you can let it go. But if it picks up momentum, if it's got energy, you're like, oh boy, now you can't let it go. Then you have this peak where it seems unbearable. And then you start to notice as the energy of it goes down, because your energy went up with it. And then as the energy starts to go down, there's that sinking, that sadness, that grief that goes with it. Then the eventual acceptance of it, and then the situation changes. And the interesting thing is that you notice that person, next time you meet them, it's like nothing ever really happened. Like it didn't really occupy their space. You could have been telling yourself a whole story that other person wasn't even aware of, didn't even occupy their mind. I remember talking to this lovely girl during the Costa Rica retreat, and she was talking about a trauma she had from her dad that she held on to for like 20 plus years, a feeling of rejection from her father. And then later, when she confronted him, it was hard for her to confront him, but she did. And she's like, why did you abandon me? What was this rejection over? And he's like, I never abandoned you. I never had those feelings in the first place. And it was a complete misunderstanding that lasted her 20 plus years. And it was a wound. Like she had to go drink ayahuasca several times to really look at it. And it was a non-thing. So there is this interesting thing. Have you ever noticed like romantic comedies, literally half of them are about misunderstandings and the fact that people just don't say what's on their mind, right? And if they just said what's on their mind, hopefully in an artful way, you could just avoid an hour and a half of watching this rom-com that never goes anywhere. It's just because they're avoiding to say the thing. They like the girl, they're scared to say the girl, so they have this whole hour and a half before they finally say, oh, I really like you, oh my God. And then the movie wraps up. So it's interesting when you notice it. We have a process now, your first process. And I think that sometimes that people underemphasize patterns. They underemphasize techniques. We all know to let things go, but we don't know how to do it. I was just talking to a patient today. Everybody knows how to we know we should let things go, but we just don't know how to do it. It's because we have to practice it. So now you're seeing it. And the more you see it early, it's going to have less momentum, less strength behind it. And then you'll have freedom. You'll have an actual, like, maybe I can let this go. So you're still there with certain karma, certain influences that are very strong. This desire for someone to act in the way that you want, basically acceptance or love, right? You basically want love. I want this. If you say no to it, then it's a rejection of my wants. Therefore, I'm feeling a rejection of my sense of self, right? It's a rejection, a feeling of lack of love. So you'll see it more. And everybody's told stories at this point, like Amir's told stories, you've told stories, other people have told stories where, oh, I was going to get angry, something was going to happen, but I saw it enough to where I could let it go. So that's a good initial indicator of how your awareness is becoming more prevalent. You're aware, it's becoming prevalent, right? Then the more you're able to let it go, you're like, oh, I'm able to let go of more and more things. Then this relaxation instinct, this desire to get back to equanimity becomes stronger and faster. It's like your body, your mind, your heart want to be stable. They want to be healthy. But you can pay attention to where it's really strong. You're like, oh, I can't let go of that. These are deep patterns, right? This is strong karma. These are deep patterns. So, You can, if you want, you can analyze it and you can kind of walk it back a little bit. Sometimes it helps. And they're most of the time very, very primal drives. Lack of love, lack of worthiness, lack of security and safety. These kinds of primal drives that are at the root of what everybody's motivations are, right? So you could notice that, and that'll give you a little bit more distance. Okay, so even if you don't mind me asking, when you didn't want to talk about going to Mexico for your yoga retreats, why would you say you didn't want to say that?
I think that the choice to go has been, it's been me pushing some fear out of the way and actually saying, this is what I want to do. And I claim that people think I can't do it, but I think sometimes it's me thinking maybe I shouldn't do it, or like, this is the path that I was supposed to go down, you know, work, get a 401k, do this, do that. And now I'm finally just kind of saying, fuck that. I want to do this and I want to see what's there for me. And not wanting to talk about it. I think, I don't know, afraid of failure, afraid that I'll do it and then nothing will come of it again. You know, another thing that I do. And I don't know, but that I think part of me wants to do it because there's a grace bet and I don't know where it's going to lead me. And I just want to do it. You know?
So you want to do this thing, you have this pull, but you're afraid, okay? And then if you might be afraid of failure, which is afraid of also judgment, right? So it's that same pattern of wanting love. I want respect, I want love, I don't want to be judged harshly, I want to be considered of value, right? You see a pattern? You see a pattern, right? So it's good to notice these patterns. You don't have to dwell on these patterns. This pattern is not a story that's real. It's a pattern. It's a machine that you fed a lot. So that wheel is spinning and has a lot of momentum. Has a lot of momentum. And these are primary motivations for people. I do think that there's a tremendous amount of power in the admittance of it. First thing is you can say it to yourself. You know, it's funny how many people just can't even admit that they're afraid. Those words are just scary to say, right? Saying it to yourself is hard, but then you say it to somebody else, it's even harder, right? So that's why there's sometimes usefulness in this kind of setting. If you say that, oh, I'm afraid, there's fear, it can be useful just to vocalize it. Even just the vocalization makes it a little bit less, does it not? It's like, I'm afraid you did something scary, and then you're like, oh, I can do a little bit more now. There's a little bit more space in my heart. I can do a little bit more. So I hope you have a lovely trip. Is there anybody out there in Zoom land who has a question or homework or something they would like to bring up on this eve of Thanksgiving? Amir, please. What's going on with you?
How you doing, Dr. Gene?
I'm doing great. I have a little anticipation of the journey to start tomorrow. It's interesting. Thank you for asking, but that's what's going on in my heart. How about you?
I hope you have a safe journey. I will be sending some prayers your way.
Thank you. As long as nothing bites me or crawls up in a different hole that doesn't belong there, then I should be okay. It is the Amazon.
I wanted to ask you about music, energy, and vibration. I was reading a book, and they were talking about how classical music, it's very high energy, and they were talking about some music like death metal or heavy rock is at a very low vibration. And once in a while, I like to listen to techno music, or even like to do a little dancing on my own. And that usually makes me feel pretty good, but I wanted to kind of run that by you and see what your opinion about that is.
Well, if you ever send me a GIF of you dancing to techno music, that will make my day, by the way, Amir. You can send that to all of them. It would be awesome. So music is amazing in the sense that it can really motivate your emotions. And people think that emotions, they often feel them more deeply than they do their intellectual thoughts, right? So we often say things like, you got to trust your gut, trust your emotions. They seem to be kind of like a deeper sense of knowledge. They could just be stronger motivations. So music can really motivate your emotions and motivate your body very quickly. It's a tremendous tool and a tremendous aid. Um, the thing to realize, I think, in the observance, the awareness is, what is it motivating you to do? So when you hear death metal, right, do you get like, ugh? You feel this aggression, you feel very uncomfortable. You can just kind of see what it makes your face do very quickly, right? So you can feel how it pushes you. And electronica might make you want to dance. Something like Mozart might make you feel very like cerebral and clear, where you can study. So music can be a wonderful tool, a wonderful thing to be enjoyed. And I do think it's a wonderful way for us to practice, because we can feel, what does it do to our body? What does it do to our emotions? What is it doing to us right now when we hear this emotion? It's so immediate. It's so visceral. So it's a wonderful thing to practice with. If you were able to, this is an interesting thing you could practice too, if you want to practice with music, is we were talking over this last Saturday when we had our little 3-hour process of, can you see the word love, L-O-V-E? I wrote it down on a piece of paper. Can you see it and not read it? So it's very hard for most people in the beginning. They just see it and they read it immediately. Their intellect slams with the word, the letters on paper, and they just immediately they say love. So I say, what is it, without reading it, and people don't know. They don't know how to answer. But the step is easier when we talk about this cup. If I say this is a cup, you know that that's a word that represents this. But if you take that away, then you don't have to read this, what it is. You can just try to let me know, what is it? So what is this if you don't say the word cup? Amir, you want to answer? All right, you already lost that one. You hesitated, right? It means you're thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, so who would like to answer this one? You can give a freebie for the class. Who wants to answer? First, okay, Brenda, I want you to hit first and answer. Go ahead. What's this? Oh, okay, good. So Brenda makes this motion of drinking. Okay, so a stronger answer would be to hit, and she could actually come over and take my cup from my hand, and she could drink it. Right? So when you drink from the cup, you're showing everybody very, very clearly that you know exactly what it is without using the secondary step, right? The secondary step of labeling a cup, because, for example, if it were German, maybe it's something else. I don't know what the word cup is in German. If you said cup and you didn't speak English, it wouldn't make any sense. But if you spoke to somebody out in the wilderness, they didn't know the word cup, and they're like, what's this? And they're motioning and you drank from it, they'd be like, oh, I gotta go drink from that. They would get it. Okay? So you have an understanding of it. It's a direct perception without engaging the intellect. So same when you're using the word on love, L-O-V-E, what is this, without engaging the intellect? It's not that the intellect is bad. The intellect is a tool. You can engage and let it go. But we don't know how to let it go because we can't even look at this word without reading it. We're so hyper-focused on the intellect as being the answer to everything. So with music, feel it, but can you do this exercise? This is a strong practice, because I personally don't like death metal, but can you be in the room with it and not let it sway your emotions? Okay, think about that. You ever see torture scenes on movies? Like the CIA's got somebody, they're always in like an awkward position where they can't lay down, and they got death metal going on for like 36 straight hours, and the person's like insane by the time they go and talk to them. But it's because the mind, the emotions, everything is clenching on it right away. But could you relax it and let that music penetrate through you? Could you let it actually not move you? Can you let go that much? That's where your mind is like a sieve instead of like a bowl. If you have rainwater and it falls down into a bowl, it's going to collect. But if you had like a colander or a sieve, then you have rainwater and it falls down into there, it's just going to go into the ground. So listening to music is perfectly fine. Music is one of the joys of life. One of the rules, I guess, And it's funny how a lot of the Buddhist rules came along. They came along in very simple ways. Like the Buddha would be sitting there one day and somebody would say, oh, I saw Ananda at the marketplace and he touched a woman and he got very lusty. And then all of a sudden the Buddha's like, all right, let's stop touching women. Everybody stop touching women. You know, it just kind of came up that way. Not that touching a woman is bad. It's because they didn't want the next step of him becoming lusty and falling off the path. Then they started to say you can't actually handle money. But then in a lot of countries now, Buddhist monks don't handle money. Whereas like in Thailand or those places, actually they do, but they can't be served by a woman. There's still very strict rules. So one of the things was not becoming too overly indulged in entertainment. For example, like they'd have plays back then or musical venues and things like that, because these things stirred the emotions so much that people could get lost in them. And these people, these monks and nuns and practitioners, they were trying to be in a practice stage where they could witness their mind and not be thrown off so easily. So they were putting themselves in a place of seclusion so they could handle it, kind of like a retreat. But then later, when your practice is strong, you can be around whatever. You can be around a strip club and you could be like, all right, there you go, beautiful women. And you just kind of let it go without going to that next step of engaging that lust, which is going to maybe be an issue for you later, might cause a problem. So take the music and just feel it. So, all right, what's it making me do? What are my emotions? What's going on with my body? And you can practice with it. If, for example, you're in the car with somebody who's playing something you hate, right? Just say, okay, your initial is to do this, like back up, open it up, and it even, instead of using your technique, because you can use technique as a shield, but instead of using your technique, see if you can just let the music pass through you. Okay? Experiment with that. Does that make sense, Amir?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
And work on that GIF. I'm looking forward to it.
Will do.
All right, anybody else out there in Zoom land have a question or a comment or a homework or something they would like to check? Did any of either of the Rubio brothers and sisters, did you work on your what is this homework when I wrote love? Either of you want to try to answer? Okay, so homework is useful when you pick it up. It's just a curiosity when it's just kind of seen and dropped, right? So it's an interesting step. Sometimes it can be very profound for somebody. Even this initial step of what's this, and you saw, I gave you a freebie, and you saw, excuse me, Brenda drink from it, right? For some people, if they're very, very confused, if I said, what's this? And they said cup, and I said, no. And they went to their room and they're like, oh my God, that's not a cup. What is it? The more consternation they have over it, the more tension that when they finally get the aha and they drink from it, the bigger the release. Because it's kind of like sex. The more you're kind of pent up, by the time you actually have the release of it, you're like, wow, that was amazing. It's because you're so focused on one thing. And when you get that release, what do you experience? Is you experience the freedom of it, this openness of it. So even when people talk about sex and tantric practices or things like that, it's the practice of watching what happens with desire, exciting desire, working with desire, not giving into desire. And finally, when you have a release of desire, how deep and big is that release? How mindful is it? How penetrating is it? You can take anything and it can be a practice where it can incite wisdom or it can incite attachment. Right? Death metal. Oh, I'm going to practice with it. I'm going to let it pass through me. Oh, okay. Wow, that was amazing. I didn't want to kill myself when I listened to it. Or, oh my God, this is driving me crazy. I'm going to have to get out of my friend's car. I never want to see this guy again. Every time I'm in his car, he plays death metal. Then you lose a relationship over it. Right? So what is the mind clenching to? Can it relax? If it clenches habitually to something, it's a pattern. Oh, what are these deeper patterns pointing me in the direction of? You saw it. Oh, it's got too much energy. It peaks. Oh, it's starting to go down. Now I'm kind of depressed. Oh, okay. Now it's going to change and the next thing comes around. This habitual process of life, these ups and downs, these swings that can cause us so much suffering. Anybody else out there have a question or homework or something else they'd like to mention? You feel pretty strong? Okay, good. That's all right. It's the holiday season. We can have a short talk, you know, ending within like a relatively hour time frame is ultimately what we were supposed to do. We just never got there. We always went long. So we might be going a little bit on time today. So that's good. So we're just gonna end with a little bit of chanting, and we'll go ahead and end for today then. And we're gonna continue meditation on Wednesdays. We have an agreement from Tracy, Brian, and Allie that they're always gonna run the Wednesday meditation for the next couple of weeks, even though I'm not here. And I'll be back and I'll be running meditation, I think December, 15th, which is like 3 weeks away. So that one I will do myself. I'll be back in the country and we'll be doing that. And we'll still try to get a longer 3-hour sit sometime in December before Christmas. Okay, so that's still on board. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Let's do some chanting. Symbo sa gan 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 symbo sa symbo sa gan 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 symbo sa symbo sa gan 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 symbo sa. You all just repeat after me. May all beings heal.
May all beings heal.
May all beings awaken.
May all beings awaken.
May all beings abide in awakening.
May all beings abide in awakening.
We'll do a Shiminpa. Breathe in. Out. In and out. All right. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. May you have a joyous, wonderful, amazing Thanksgiving in your relationships, the people that you have to speak to. May they be full of joy and not contention, right? This is your deepest karma. Your relationships, your friends, your family, those people you see on the holidays, this is your deepest karma. It's an opportunity. Let go of the past grievances when they talk that gibberish in your ear, just like death metal. Just be a sieve. They go through, just let it pass, smile, and pass the mashed potatoes.
Hey.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Happy
everyone.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Have a safe trip.
Thank you.